Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Try this experiment. When you meet a college kid who has a dog, a favorite dog, a pet, ask him the following question. If you were at the beach one day with your dog, and your dog went out into the ocean, and there was a current, and your dog was drowning, but a few feet away from your dog, there was a person drowning, who would you save first? Would you save the dog, or your pet, your family pet that you love for so many years, or this absolute stranger who's flailing in the water? Well, Dennis Prager says that when he goes around to college campuses to speak, he asks this question to college students, and the majority of college students who are being honest say, I would save my pet before I would save the human. In this week's Parsha, we find a major transition. You know, in the beginning of the Torah, last week's Torah portion, Adam and Eve were commanded to eat from all the trees in the garden, with the exception of one tree. But Adam and Eve were vegetarians. They were not allowed to eat meat. They were not allowed to consume animals or any kind of meat. In this week's Parsha, after the flood, when Noah comes out of the ark, God says, okay, Noah, you and your family now could eat animals. And they offer sacrifices, they slaughter the animals, and they eat the meat. And ever since then, we've been doing what Noah and his family have been doing since then, not what Adam and Eve have done. We eat meat, we eat chicken, and so on and so forth. And the question is why? Why do we have a right to kill an animal? Why doesn't Judaism demand, if Judaism demands the highest standards of morality, of compassion, why should we kill an animal or any living creature? Why should we not be vegetarians? Why is it the laws of kosher don't include or require vegetarianism? So there are many answers, but I want to share with you three answers. The most practical, basic answer is that after the flood, there was no more vegetation. So there was no fruits and trees to eat. All there were the kosher animals that Noah took onto the ark. So Noah was forced to eat meat at that point. But that would only explain why he did it. Why don't we go back to eating only vegetarian now that we do have vegetation? So the second answer given is that during the time of the flood, the sin of man was very great, and humans were treating animals like humans. They were cohabitating with animals. So they were treating animals like humans, and they were treating humans like animals. They were murdering people like animals. So God said, you're confusing the level of a human and the level of an animal. So therefore, to make a clear distinction, you are on the hierarchy of creation as a human being, and to demonstrate that you may eat an animal for human consumption, to demonstrate the idea that you're on a higher level, and therefore never treat an animal like a human to cohabitate with an animal, and never treat a human like an animal by killing a human being. And unfortunately, the sin and the sins of that generation continue till this day and age. Look at the wars, World War II, World War I, how many innocent people were killed in the 20th century, where humans are still acting like animals, not realizing that we're humans. We have to act higher than animals, not just on our instincts. And you may say, well, what about us civilized people? Ask yourself, when you see people who are very compassionate, they give a lot of money for Save the Whales, or for pet organizations, or in New York sometimes in the winter you'll see a person walking their dog, and their dog is wearing a very nice sweater because it's cold outside. But they walk by a homeless guy who's without a sweater. They don't care about the homeless guy who doesn't have a sweater. They're more concerned that their dog should have a sweater. So the Torah says, 1 minute, it's nice to be good to animals, but remember, you're a human being and you're on a higher level. The third reason is the Kabbalistic answer. Kabbalah explains there are 4 levels of creation: inanimate objects, plants and vegetation, animals, and then humans. Each level's goal is to rise to the next level. So the goal of the water, the inanimate water, is to nourish the plants. And when it becomes consumed in the plants, it fulfills its purpose. Then the plants and the vegetation and the grass is consumed by the animal. That's the elevation of the plant. And then the animal is consumed by the human. That's the elevation of the animal. And what does the human being do with that energy? He serves God. And when you serve God, you elevate all the 4 levels of creation to the spiritual level, which is the service of God. And so the truth is, the only justification to eat animals, if you're going to go home tonight and have a burger or a steak, that's perfectly kosher. That's fine if it's kosher. It has to be killed in a way that it's painless to the animal. But you have to take that energy after dinner and do something good with that energy. Do a mitzvah, learn Torah, pray, help another person with that energy. Because if you just take that energy and you go watch the football game, maybe you didn't have a right to kill the animal, to use the energy to just do something unimportant. But if you take that energy and you do a mitzvah with it, you eat kosher food, you make blessings on it, and then you take the energy of the food you got, the protein, and you use it for holiness, for a divine purpose in this world, then you've elevated not just the animal, but the vegetation within the animal and the water within the vegetation. You've elevated the whole creation to God. But what is your justification of eating meat? There has to be this consciousness when you do it.